Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and may I congratulate the Honourable Member for Kingston upon Hull North for securing this important debate today, and also say how pleased I am to see the Honourable Lady receive her damehood in the New Year's Honours List. Her speech this evening has helped highlight the value of school meals. They really do play a vital role in ensuring that children are healthy, well-nourished and ready to concentrate and learn in the classroom. And that is why the Department for Education not only sets the school food standards to ensure meals are healthy, but also provides free school meals for 1.3 million disadvantaged children, as well as universal infant free school meals for 1.4 million children. And I do understand the concerns that she has raised this evening around what has happened in Hull, who have previously subsidised the cost of meals for children who are not eligible for free school meals. And I am aware of the local decision that she raised regarding changing these subsidies. I must take this opportunity, though, to stress that decisions around school food provision are devolved locally, and that this is a decision that has been made by the local authority and primary head teachers at a local level based on their local knowledge and priorities. To put it in a national context, most parents are asked to cover the full cost of a meal for their child. And however, it is important to note that the recent changes in Hull do not affect those children that are eligible for the free school meals already. I want to reassure the Honourable Member that we do encourage local authorities and school governing boards to give due consideration when making changes of this nature and to consult with parents. So that does mean considering how their prices will have an impact. However, I am sure that the local authority and primary head teachers will not have taken this decision lightly, and I have noted as well that they've made this change incrementally over time, over the course of 2 years. I've heard the Honourable Member's concerns and I do sympathise with them, but both myself and the Department do believe that it is absolutely right that school leaders have the freedom to run their schools in the way that they know best how to do. The Honourable Member highlighted the Academies programme.
I'm grateful for what the Minister's saying, but I'm interested in this idea that school leaders, are acting in the best interest. Of course, they're acting in the best interest of the school that they are the head of. I think my concern is about the wider issue of the public health agenda that the Council have a responsibility for, and how best we can make sure the school is fitting into that wider public health benefit that we all want to see.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I was just about to move on to the Academies point that the Honourable Member mentioned, which fits into what she's just asked me there about how the interplay can work between the Academies and the local authorities' responsibilities. So just to touch on it really, and then I will go back to the point specifically. The Honourable Member highlighted the Academies programme facilitating this, but both myself and the Government actually see this as providing opportunities through its key principles of autonomy, accountability and collaboration. The schools are ultimately responsible for delivering on the free school meal policy and on delivering their actual meals. This includes the opportunity for schools to collaborate by coming together in strong trusts. And I must also note that we encourage all academy trusts to build proactive relationships with parents and local communities to create a shared ownership of their school's strategy and vision, which is what I think the Honourable Member was foreseeing that she wants to happen. And once again, I must stress that it is right that the decisions are taken based on the local priorities of that school, who has to administer the policies.
Can I say to the Honourable Lady that I have some sympathy with her, having sat on that bench and had to deliver uncomfortable news to the benches opposite about things that they're campaigning for. But I'm wondering if she might meet with myself and my two honourable friends, and we can talk about poverty proofing for schools generally, and the kinds of advice that the council, the government might be able to provide to councils and to schools about how that might proceed. We would find that really useful to be able to talk to her about the issues of free school meals, but about other issues also for working families who are struggling because they simply don't have the wherewithal to pay for the rent and for food and we would very much appreciate an opportunity to talk to the Minister outside this chamber.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I am more than happy to meet the Honourable Member or any other member for that point on this subject or any other within my brief, because I think they are important topics and there is a lot of mileage as to what the Honourable Lady brought up today. So just to get back to where I was going to say that I do think it is reasonable that we do empower our local academies to make these decisions. And I also think it's absolutely right that we are targeting our support towards those families that are most in need. Now, I have heard the pleas opposite and from my own side questioning the eligibility criteria that we currently have to make sure that they are genuinely the most in need. And our government has committed to reviewing this once the finish of rollout of universal credit. And I'll ensure that I personally look as well at the eligibility criteria. In terms of wider funding, as a government, we have recognised the pressures that schools have faced and we have listened to teachers. And that is why we have recently announced the biggest funding boost to schools in a decade, which will give every school the money that they need for their children. This includes levelling up all primary schools to receive a minimum of £4,000 from 2021 to 22, so it is the biggest increase for schools that genuinely most need it. I also want to take...
On this, I'm very grateful to the Minister for giving way. On the point of funding, I'm the chair of the all-party group on school food, as I know the Minister will be aware. And what campaigners bring to me all the time is the issue of the amount of money given per preschool meal is currently £2.30 from the government, and that the amount, not only about eligibility of who's eligible, but the amount that the school receives should be more in the region of £2.73 to actually meet the real cost. So it's sort of part of the school funding thing, but specifically for the funding that the schools are given towards that meal really does need to be uprated. Is that something else you will look at?
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Yes, indeed. We have committed to increase it in line with inflation, but it is something that we constantly keep at review. And so I also want to take this opportunity to set out the critical role that the Department of Education plays on providing healthy, nutritious food for children, which I know is something that the Honourable Member is very passionate about. And this is delivered through a range of programmes, many of which are targeted specifically at the most disadvantaged children. This is part of our strong commitment to promoting social mobility and ensuring equality of opportunity for every child.
The Minister for giving way. There's a programme on TV just last week, and it specifically was talking about food for children in schools. And what that programme indicated was that there wasn't an all-round policy across the whole of the United Kingdom where all the food was nutritious, didn't lead to obesity, had the right numbers of carbohydrates, etc. In other words, the food was the sort of food that children needed to develop their bodies and develop their minds. The programme was indicating there are certain areas in the mainland UK where you can get those type of foods for the children, but in other schools you don't get it. So I'm just wondering, Minister, I welcome what you've said in relation to what's going to happen, but how can we make sure that all the schools provide the same food nutritiously to the development of the child, both in mind and body?
Thank you. This is extremely important, and we do have national food standards already in place where schools have to adhere to those, and they ensure that food is of a high quality, it is healthy and nutritious, and it is lower in fat and salt. Now, that is something that I do want to personally look at as well to ensure that it is actually happening across the country, because we are actually going further on this, and our forthcoming update on standards has been produced with the Department and Public Health England to ensure that we are making the meals as nutritious as possible. Alongside this, our Healthy Schools rating system celebrates the school's efforts to support children in this area, so almost incentivising them as well as enforcing it. We remain committed to ensuring that the most disadvantaged children receive a healthy lunch at school, and as I stated already, last year around 1.3 million disadvantaged children benefited from this important provision. And whilst included in this, around 10,000 pupils in the city of Kingston upon Hull. Universal Infant Free School Meals programme introduced in 2014 has proven very successful, and a further 1.4 million infant pupils have received free nutritious meals at lunchtime. Now, we know that free school meal take-up is high, But we do want to make sure that as many eligible pupils take it up as possible and are claiming those free school meals. So we try to make it as simple as possible by ensuring that we introduce an eligibility checking system whereby the local authority can easily identify, and the school can, those that are eligible. We've also set up model registration forms to make it as easy as possible for parents, and we provided more guidance at job centres for those that are eligible. In addition to school meals, because it isn't just about the lunchtime offering, it is also about breakfast, which has been mentioned in this debate today. The Government is continuing to support the expansion of school breakfast clubs, and we are investing up to £35 million to kickstart or improve existing clubs in schools, with a clear aim that they can then become fully sustainable over the long term. This includes our recent announcement that the programme has been extended for an additional year until March 2021. Breakfast clubs ensure that children start the day with a nutritious breakfast. I'm a strong believer that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And the Honourable Lady will no doubt be aware that there are already a number of successful breakfast clubs in her own constituency. And our work does go beyond the school gates. The Government's Holiday and Activities programme supports disadvantaged children to access healthy food and enriching activities over the school holidays, which is extremely vital. In 2019, we invested £9 million in local holiday activity and food coordinators in 11 authorities over the UK, and they were responsible for funding and overseeing 3 holiday clubs so that disadvantaged children in those areas could benefit from high-quality provision during the school holidays. Before Christmas, we launched a grant fund for a further £9 million in 2020.
Before she moves on to the next point, unfortunately, Hull wasn't in receipt of any of that funding for the school holidays, and I am growing increasingly concerned about the problem of holiday hunger. And although it's great that money went into, I think the Honourable Lady said, 11 local authority areas, there are many more local authority areas in the country that need assistance, and I wonder whether she could say anything about what the plans are for this year and whether there'll be additional funding made available.
Thank you. So we have already announced that further £9 million, and I completely agree with her on the importance of tackling this issue. In fact, on our own manifesto, there was a £1 billion fund for holiday activities, and we're just working to what that actually encompasses, because it will also encompass, I believe, some of these issues. And then moving forward, I do note the Honourable Member's work for Washington, the Honourable Member for Washington and Sunderland West work on the Children's Future Food Inquiry. Although that was not specifically referenced today, I do want to assure her that the Government will be getting back to the report in due course, and there are a number of interesting suggestions made in that review. Ministers have addressed some of the most pressing issues by writing to schools in the meantime, ensuring that they are fully aware of their responsibilities in these areas, including the fact that they should be providing access to free, fresh drinking water at all times. So I do want to take this opportunity to once again thank the Honourable Member for Kingston upon Hull North for raising this important issue with me and the House today. Our recent funding announcement will be a significant boost to schools, but it is of course right that local authorities and schools do have the freedom to decide how they spend their money. I have said throughout how the Government values the continuation of the contribution that school funds make in ensuring children are healthy and are able to concentrate and learn in school. We do have an ongoing programme of work that supports our commitments in this area, and we are going further, updating the schools fund standard for one and expanding our breakfast and holiday clubs programmes. I look forward to meeting the Honourable Members to discuss these details in further, but I do want to assure them that I will respond both to the Children's Food Inquiry shortly, but also that we will continue to work closely with the sector over the coming months.
The question